Good evening, everyone. Today's topic is, does God hide the truth? It is week number 32 in the rays of the one light. So here we go. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it and your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Brahmachari Yogananda. In last week's reading, we saw that the great masters themselves counseled discretion in the dissemination of truth. The counter-argument is sometimes made, but the Lord doesn't hide. He reveals his beauty in the sunsets, his tender sympathy in the rain, his wrath in the thunder, his restless energy in the brooks, his power in the sunlight. There are exoteric truths, and there are also esoteric truths. There is that which is revealed impersonally and left up to us to interpret, such as the thunder and our perception of it as divine wrath, the rain and our perception of it as God's sympathy. But behind even God's most open expressions, there lies impenetrable mystery. The wind blows where it wills, said Jesus in chapter 3 of the Gospel of St. John. You hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it is going. So is everyone who is born of the Spirit. And Sri Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, by me the whole vast universe of things is spread abroad. By me the unmanifest. In me are all existences contained, not I and them. God's hidden reality cannot be understood by the reasoning faculty. India's Shankya philosophy states frankly, Ishwar Ashidya, God is not provable. A willingness to seek the underlying reality behind appearances is essential for those who would know God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. I want to reread this Gita reading. It's chapter 9, the 6th stanza, out of the interpretation and translation that Swamiji's given here, because I think it will be helpful today. Actually, I'm going to start with the 5th, because it just helps. Behold my divine mystery. All beings seem not to exist in me, nor I in them. Yet I am their sole creator and preserver. Think of it as thus. As air moves through space, but is not space, so do all creatures have their being in me, but are not I. That's enough. So the first thing is, it is just absolutely fascinating that it seems like all of us aren't in God, and this topic is, does God hide the truth, or does God hide himself? It seems like, where is he? Where is he? And yet, we're swimming in him. We're living in his presence. He's all around. He's everywhere. And he's within us. Yet it seems like he's not within. It seems like he's not without. It seems like, where is he? Where is he? And if we really search, we can find him. And we'll get more into that. But also, think of it as thus. As air moves through space but is not space, so do all creatures have their being in me, but are not I. One interesting thing that I want to point out here is in the chakras in this one. And it's possible that Christ was referring to this as well. That the 4th chakra, the Anahat chakra, here, the symbol is air. And then the 5th chakra, here, the symbol is the ether, or space. And Master says that if you pray deeply enough, the ether will burn. Another way of translating his words or understanding his words is, if we raise our energy up high enough, that we can pierce through this veil of Maya and see that the world is made of energy. And of course, if we begin to raise our energy, I'm not going to go through all the chakras today, but we can begin to understand higher and higher truths. But today, we're just looking at it, even in the physical realm, that here we were speaking of the fact that the wind blows, and we don't really know, where does that wind come from? Where is it going? There's a song for those of you who wish to be deeply in tune with Swami Kriyananda. I believe the name of this song is simply Why. But in this song, that a little girl, she keeps asking why. And one of the lyrics is, her professors explained it wisely away, but still all she could ask was, why? And when I heard that song of Swamiji's, it just resounded so deeply in me, because the professors will explain it all wisely away. Well, there's a pressure difference here in the atmosphere, and that causes the north front to come here, or whatever the meteorologists say, I don't know. But you wonder and you think, okay, that must be true, but there must be something happening on a deeper level. And our soul yearns to know these deeper truths. Another idea that has just come into my mind here is, if you pick up the book called The Art and Science of Raja Yoga by Swami Kriyananda, in it he gives an exercise for staring at the sun. Now don't just go and stare at the sun, take the instructions seriously and read those first in that book that I mentioned. But in that he says that Paramahansa Yogananda took, I believe it was a month of his life, and every day he would stare at the sun for a certain amount of time. And Paramahansa Yogananda said that during that time he developed deep wisdom, that the sun gives the wisdom aspect of God, that God is there hiding behind nature, and God is hiding in different ways through different aspects. In some aspects he reveals himself as the sun, and if we tune into that, we begin to understand God as wisdom. If we tune into the moon, we begin to understand God as compassion, as these cool moon rays and moon beams that come at night. There's a certain healing energy that will heal our physical body in the moon's energy. Of course, just looking at it and saying, oh, please heal me, nothing happens. And that also is interesting in talking about, does God heal? But why is it that sometimes God answers our prayers, sometimes God doesn't answer our prayers? Master said, look at that scientifically and take that to its depth and really try to understand that. But there is a science behind it, but we have to understand that science, just as there are deep, deep sciences of atomic theory or something like that. And it's not like you're going to understand that deep scientific truth with one day of study, nor are you going to understand God, why he doesn't answer your prayers sometimes and why he does, with just one day of making a determined effort that today I'll pray and maybe I'll get the prayer just right and say his name just properly and then he'll listen. But it's not like that. That he doesn't care outwardly how you address him. He cares inwardly. And beyond that, he also cares if you have the ability to listen to him and listen to the ability to even re-attune your prayer to his will. Because we will have egoic prayers and say, I want this and I want that from life. And if God fulfilled all of our egoic prayers, we would be in a bigger jumble than we can ever imagine, because most of us have no idea what we really want. On day one, we pray for X. On day two, we pray for Y, which is conflicting with X. And poor God, he knows what he's doing. But maybe we could say poor devas and causal beings that have to carry these prayers out that are so jumbled in our minds. 2 points there. One, that we have to calm our minds so that we can give clear prayers. And then the other point is that we have to get rid of our ego. That's the highest thing that we want to do. The other way that I said that earlier is that we need to attune our will to God's. But as we start to reduce our ego, then we can see that God, he really isn't hiding. That actually he's behind all of created nature. But here's the thing, that God, he's chosen the best hiding place, and that hiding place is right within your own self. But we're so restless, our mind is so restless with desires, that we can't see that God is there. But he is there, and if you want him deeply enough, that you will learn through meditation, and it doesn't even have to be through meditation. It could be through deep enough prayer. Of course, I do recommend meditation, but it's a scientific approach on how to calm your emotions, how to calm your heart, how to focus your energy up in the higher centers in your physical body, how to calm everything, your mind, your breath, so that you can see, oh my gosh, God's right here, right now, with me. He's always been here. So is he hiding? Yes, but he's hiding behind your own restlessness. And then if you can calm that restlessness, then you can see him. But I want to again emphasize that point. He's never gone anywhere. That he's right here. And this isn't that in 1,000 years you're going to find him. You have to understand he's right now. That he's here with you right now. That we run away by seeking him in external things. And we need to get back to our own source. Let's talk about this topic from another angle. And that probably as we get older becomes a very real angle to us. Sometimes this comes to us earlier in life, but as we get older, our friends certainly depart to the other side, and we wonder, where did they go? And as you get older and older, you watch your friends, they start dropping off one by one, and they must be going somewhere, and it makes us wonder, where will I be going at the end of this incarnation? You see, Master said, and it's the veil I talked about in the beginning, that it's just a veil that separates this physical world from the astral world. And that veil is a particular vibration of energy that is called the ether. And so your departed loved ones are on the other side of that veil. But if you can practice Kriya Yoga, if you can go deeply in the inside, then you can commune with these folks that are on this other side of this veil. And so yes, God is on that other side of the veil, but God hides even more deeply. Here's an analogy that Master gave, and that is, imagine one jar with salt water in that jar. And then you take that, let me call it a bottle. You take that bottle with salt water in it, and you put that in another bottle, and then you cork that bottle. And then you take those two bottles and you put that in a third bottle, and you cork that. And then you take that whole deal and you throw it in the ocean. And there it is, bobbing on the ocean. And so now, if you imagine all of this, if you get to the center of all of those three bottles, it's just seawater there. If you get to the center of your own self, then it's just God there. But it's very difficult to get through all those three different bottles. Now those bottles describe our three bodies: the physical body, the astral body, and the causal body. And let's also define ego. Ego is bliss, or ego is the soul attached to a body. But why this spiritual game is so difficult, why it seems that God is hiding so well, is that even when we crack the bottle of this physical frame and we leave, that still there's that salt water, our soul, is still stuck in two more bodies, the astral body and the causal body. And so in deep meditation we have to learn to penetrate all of these veils. And obviously that is a big job, but we have to tell ourselves, we have to believe that it's possible, because it's so easy to think, well, the great masters can do it, they're great masters. And Paramahansa Yogananda's reply to that was, yes, but what do you think made me a master? It was by doing. And so we need to do all the spiritual practices, but one other aspect of doing is constantly reminding ourselves that we are made in the image and likeness of God, that God is right here, right now with us. And the spiritual path, does God hide? Does he hide the truth? Yes, but he hides it in simplicity. He hides it in plain daylight, that he's the one who's doing everything. There's a chant that we play, what is this life flowing through my veins? Can it be other than divine? I think it's one of these thoughts flowing through my brain or something like that. But can those also be divine? And when you start thinking in this manner, where do thoughts come from? Well, of course they must be coming from God. Now sometimes we only think, well, I got a good idea, so I will attribute that to God. Well, that's the beginning of making a relationship with God. But then we have to go deeper, and we have to say, well, even when a bad thought comes in, that on some level that must be God who put that in. But God has divided himself, you see. He's divided himself into lower and higher aspects in this case, in terms of consciousness. And if we roam around on the lower levels of consciousness, we'll never get to know him. Let me go back to these three, I don't know whether to say jars or bottles, containing the salt water, but that doesn't matter. The deal is that when you break that one bottle, that you go and your other two bottles, they're still there. I was trying to put that together with the thought that was coming there earlier. Why is it so hard? Oh, the lower consciousness. So when we're in lower consciousness, people don't even believe that there's the other two bottles. They say, I can't see my astral body. I don't know that it exists. These guys must be crazy. But this is the point that I want to make, that you can go on and on in a consciousness of materialism for millions of years, for actually millions of human incarnations if you want. But you will know that even though you can't see your physical body, your astral body, that there's something within you that says there must be more to life than materialism. There must be more to life than this physical reality. And then you become a seeker. And then you want to know truth. And you see that, okay, truth is a little bit hidden. But let's say you even just pick up this one point here of the fact that you might have an astral body. And you can go and search on the internet, and you can find pictures of people's astral bodies and all kinds of different things. However, you'll probably get more confused than anything if you start searching too much like that on the internet. You can do it if you like, but when you find a true guru, like Brahmachari Yogananda, who will explain all of these things to you, then you're really well on your way to understanding. And if you really want to know, Brahmachari Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda wrote 140 books. He has God knows how many videos on YouTube, and you can explore these things through one channel, and through true channels. Not people who have just read a book on the astral body and then are giving you some compilation of 2 or 3 ideas that they got from some books or from their friends. When you tune into Swami Kriyananda, when you tune into Brahmachari Yogananda, you're tuning into people who could not only see their own astral body, but could see much, much more. Who could see through the delusion of space completely, and could understand really exactly how to penetrate through the ether and go far beyond that. And so someone like a Brahmachari Yogananda has figured out how to crack those 3 bottles, and he can merge his soul with the oversoul, with the great soul, whenever he wants, and that he can live in that space. In fact, he's always living in that space, but he does sometimes drop his consciousness down so that he can be with us on this level of reality. Here's an interesting thing. It's as hard as it is for us to climb this living tree of our own spine, of our own levels of consciousness, and re-emerge back to God. It's that hard for masters to bring their level of consciousness back down. That Brahmachari Yogananda used to collect canes as a hobby to keep his mind back down on this physical plane so that he could relate to other human beings, so that he wouldn't just drift back off into samadhi. Another interesting story, I had a friend who collected many different rocks and gems and beautiful things in terms of rocks. Every once in a while, I can be a little too critical, and I was thinking, I didn't tell him, of course, but in my own mind I was thinking, what a waste of time, that he could be doing Kriya Yoga rather than running all around the world and collecting these rocks. And a few months, I think it was, I don't remember the details, later, I went to a place called Mount Washington and saw many of Master's personal things, and one thing he had was this huge rock collection. It was another hobby he had of collecting different gemstones, and I thought, my master did this. I shouldn't have judged my friend so much in things. Every human being has their own ways of enjoying life, and ultimately, even something like collecting stones, that in the higher yugas, people understand the power of crystals and how to use those in many different ways that I don't want to get into. But the point of all of that is that God he sleeps in the rocks, he sleeps in the minerals, and then slowly he starts waking up in the plants, and then he wakes up more in the animals. He wakes up even more in the average human being who has this material consciousness that we've been talking about. And then finally he completely wakes up into the superhuman, the Superman, or those human beings who really remember who they truly are, but they have to do the work. They have to climb up like that. Anyways, so those are 2 stories on how Master had to keep his consciousness down like that, and how it was an effort for him. But the great masters, they come back again and again in order to uplift this entire planet. There are great masters like Babaji, Paramahansa Yogananda told us that he was Krishna in a past life. And it's well known in India that Krishna and Arjuna were Narada and Narayan in former lives beyond that. And it really makes you wonder, how many incarnations has Babaji come back again and again in order to help us? And it also makes us wonder, okay, how did he achieve that level of consciousness? And we might put it far off, far, far off, that one day too, we will achieve the same level of consciousness that Babaji has achieved. But we don't need to put it far off. That we too, we can become Jivan Muktas in this lifetime. Yes, when we're Jivan Mukta, we won't have all of the siddhis or the powers that a siddha or a completely enlightened soul has, who is 100% one with God. It will take a few more incarnations, but our consciousness will be in oneness with God. That is such an important point to understand, that this journey that we're trying to take as spiritual aspirants, as seekers, this journey is a journey of consciousness. That we are trying to refine our consciousness, that more and more we're trying to seek God, but we're trying to seek Him, yes, within our own physical body, because it's beautifully laid out that our spine and the chakras, and that each one of those vibrates in a different way so that we can climb this living tree. But more than that, we're trying to seek God in consciousness. And we're trying to understand that when we have a low consciousness, we're still manifesting God, and He's still there. It's just in a way that implies separation. As our energy comes down the spine, we get more and more into this material world, more and more into ego, more and more into all of these barriers. And as we climb up the spine, that we get out of a material consciousness. We get more into a consciousness of energy. We get even more into an understanding that it's mind that is controlling everything. And we begin to learn to control our mind. You know, I've talked so much about going up and down the spine today and the different levels of consciousness in the spine, that I really want to emphasize to everyone that Kriya Yoga is truly a gift from God to teach us how to cleanse our spine so that our consciousness, the same way that a cork, that if you take a cork and you tie a piece of lead to it with a string, then that cork is going to maybe sink very low in the water. Maybe it won't completely sink, but almost sink. And then if you start removing some of that lead, the cork will higher. If you cut the string and remove all the lead, the cork will float all the way to the top of the water. And in the same way, your soul wants to rise back up. Your soul knows that inside is God, and that it is who you truly are. But we have to listen to that, and we have to listen very carefully. But through Kriya Yoga, we can cut that cord with all this heavy weight, and that we can learn how to climb back up, and we can learn how to have our consciousness centered here at all times. Paramahansa Yogananda said that if you want to be a master in this incarnation, keep your attention here at all times. This is why we need to take periods of seclusion. This is why we need to meditate in the morning and in the evenings, to remember how to practice keeping our consciousness here. But then even in the battle din of activity, in daily activity, we still need to strive to keep our mind here. When we're solving a problem at work, we need to, with our mind here, say, God, which is the solution. Then we drop down, we listen here, thank you, God. We go back up, actually come back up, thank Him from here. And this is a little inner dialogue that needs to be going on between you and God at all times. And if you make this happen, you will see that God is not hiding. You will see that He has not actually, well, He has hidden the truth, but you will see that it's in your own ability to find the truth. There's a quote, well, I'll do my best at quoting it. I don't have it in front of me, only in my mind. But it is from the autobiography of a yogi. And Paramahansa Yogananda says, with what velvet glove of humility has the omnipotent Creator veiled His iron hand of omnipresence. It's something very close to that. But it's a beautiful quote, and that makes us think, why did God hide all of this? You can think of it as thus. He's very, very shy. He has an inferiority complex, and he He can't handle harsh words or harsh language. But he's just like a fragile little child. And the only way that you can communicate with him is with perfect divine love and sensitivity, because he's so humble. And then that means also that you have to become so humble. And that means you have to see that really you are not who you think you are. You don't even really exist. Don't let that ego sneak in there and say, but I do, I'm this, I'm that. Don't be a bundle of self-definitions. Instead, be like living in that feeling of that velvet glove of humility. But if you become that bundle of self-definitions, they become like a blanket. And you wear one blanket and you say, oh, it's pretty warm. And that blanket's a self-definition, like, I'm an American, I'm an Indian, whatever. Then you take on another one. I'm age blah blah blah. And people who are this age only act like this. Then you take on another blanket and you say that I don't know, I'm a deep meditator, which seems like a good self-definition, but then when you have a bad day at meditation, then you're going to be mad at yourself and you won't want your friends to know that you only meditated for 30 minutes today or whatever the case is. And you can imagine, I hope I painted the picture clearly now. Eventually, all of these self-definitions start to weigh us down and our spines reflect that. But it's not ourselves that we hate. And make sure you understand this difference. Because sometimes life becomes so tough and we think, oh, who am I? I'm such a terrible person. I made this terrible mistake. That, no, you didn't really. God made the mistake through you. Our greatest mistake is a misunderstanding of how this whole thing works. So don't identify with these blankets that are weighing you down and think that you've done all of these things. You haven't. God has done them through you. And if you have that understanding, you can cast off all the blankets right now. And you can remember that you are a child of God. And you can remember that eternal joy is your birthright. And that doesn't have to be hidden from you. It's yours. It's yours right now. You can live in that joy. You can live in that peace. You can raise your energy up through all of the different chakras. And you can be a perfect channel of light, of love, of joy. And it's so much better to live like that. That we've lived long enough with a material consciousness, thinking that if I just get this much more money, or if I get this material thing, that I'll be happy. And lo and behold, those material things break, they get scratched, whatever. We have to sell them, and on. But this could go on for so long. So long. How long do you think it's already been going on? Haven't you had enough? Don't you want to live in perfect love, perfect peace, perfect joy? Well, you can. But you have to make that decision very firmly within yourself. And then you have to cooperate with God. And then no matter what tests are thrown at you, you have to stand up to those tests. And you have to affirm mainly within yourself that you choose God. That you choose nothing else but God and His consciousness. And no matter how much this world hates you, tries to beat you down, that still you will give love. And that you will give love to all. Not just those who are nice to you. Not just those that you only have to associate with once every year. But to all. You must see God in all outwardly. And then you easily will find Him within. And you will say to Him, you can't remain hidden anymore. Joy to you.